Alright, welcome to the video. Today I'm going to explain what I think you should do on absolutely every single budget up to about £2,000 on Sorare. I've been playing for 2 years, so I like to think I know what I'm talking about, and then in addition to that, prices are quite low on Sorare at the moment, so I think it's a great time to learn the basics of the game and be as optimal as you can, and that's what I'm going to explain, at least in my opinion here. Starting off then, we're looking at the free-to-play players up to about £20, right? If you are free-to-play and you're looking at joining this game, the only divisions you can play where you don't need to buy any cards are these amateur leagues. As soon as you sign up, my link's in the description if you want to sign up. As soon as you sign up, you will get these common white cards where you essentially draft your team. The key to this is that you're going to have to pick players a little bit outside of the box. The reason for that is if you look at the leaderboard, you're competing against 99,000 people, pretty much 100,000 people minimum in each competition, and the prize pool's only 200 cards. On top of that, you do get some Sorare coins, but we're going to ignore them for now. Just looking at the card rewards, which you could sell, you get 200 rewards. So 200 competing against 100,000 people is going to be very difficult, but at the end of the day, that's why it's free. You can learn to play the game, you can learn to get better at the game, and it's a bit of fun for really if you just don't want to put any money in. What I would suggest though, is if you can put a little bit of money in, it will seriously improve your chance of winning, and let me explain why. If you can afford to put a little bit of money in, is you can enter these semi-pro competitions. So semi-pro competitions run is the same as the amateur competitions. There's Premier League amateur, there is Serie A, there's La Liga, there's the MLS, the French League, and the one I'm missing, the German League, the Bundesliga. So all of those leagues will have what I'll describe as the Amateur League, the Semi-Pro League, and what I'll get into in the next step, which is the Pro League. The key here is that you're competing against far less people, because in the entry requirements, you can click details and you can see you have to have less than 10 limiteds to enter. So this is aimed at people on a budget. This is aimed at people with £20 or less. If we look at who came first this week, they just had 4 common cards and 1 Mark Gay. Mark Gay is not a Kevin De Bruyne. He's not a Haaland, right? He is a budget player. You could have picked him up from anywhere between £5 and £10 and won this division. The winner of this division for this week got a limited tier 2, so you'd be able to get a Grealish, a Mitoma, being on absolute form. Trippier is a monster in this game. So many different options, right? But the key of why I think it would be so beneficial if you are a free player, just to put a little bit of money in, I'm talking, less than 20 quid here, you cut down from playing 100,000 people to 5,000 people, but you're still competing for 200 cards, right? That's where I think it's key. In terms of which one to play between the Premier League, Bundesliga, MLS, it really doesn't matter. Just pick whichever you have the most knowledge on. Obviously, the Premier League will be ending soon, the MLS will be continuing soon. But like I said, it doesn't really matter because the MLS cards will be slightly relatively more expensive and the Premier League will be slightly cheaper because the games aren't coming to an end. And then on top of that, Premier League is going to be more popular than, say, the French League. So they will also be a little bit more expensive. So in short, it doesn't matter which one you play. Play one which you think you will have the most success in, or more importantly, which one you think you'll have the most fun in. Moving on to the next region, then we're looking at the £20 region to the £100 region. Starting off at the bottom end of the £20 region, you'll probably want to jump into the pro leagues. That's where Sorare would want you transition to. That's why it's called from semi-pro to pro. And yeah, I kind of, would agree with them on that principle. These competitions actually, I think, are really underrated because anyone can play them across, any scarcity. I could play them, even though I've got a massive gallery and played for 2 years. But, people choose to not play them. I'm not really sure why. I really think they pay out really well for, who you're competing against. You cut down the amount of people you're competing against to about 2,800, just looking at the Premier League, for example. And the key is, the blocker for a lot of new Sorare managers is buying a goalkeeper because they're usually the most expensive card. The reason for that is that obviously you only get 1 goalkeeper compared to maybe 4 defenders, and then the prices and, if there's only one of them, they're going to be more expensive. That's how it works on Sorare. And if you can play the Pro League, right, use a free goalkeeper, use a common goalkeeper, because then you get rid of the cheapest, then you get rid of having to buy the most expensive player. Teams like this, Jordan Ayew, Pascal Gross, Koulibaly, guy, like, they're just not the most expensive cards, and people are still winning this. It's all about strategy. It's all about fantasy sports at the end of the day. And, in the star pool, so they get the tier 1 pool, sorry, you could pick up a Harry Kane, a Marcus Rashford, a Rodrigo. So many good cards that you can go out and sell. Harry Kane last sold for £88, right? That's probably going to be more expensive than your entire team because you don't need a goalkeeper. So they're the type of options you can have when you get lucky, when you win on that budget. When you get into the higher ends, there's plenty of options you can do. You can play the Premier League Pro and the Bundesliga Pro. Like I said, I really think the Pro Leagues are aimed at these type of budgets, and I think it's the optimal way to play. But let's say you're just a Premier League guy or a La Liga guy and you want to go out and you don't want to spend any more like teams. what you could do is buy some depth in players. So maybe you can play different fixtures. So for example, if you've just had Man City playing if you've just had Crystal Palace playing Leeds and they've put up really good scores, if they go to Man City next, they're probably not going to have the best scores. So rather than having to sell those players or something a little bit more difficult, you could just rotate into another team. Maybe bring in an Aston Villa player that you know can play well. But on top of that, on the higher end of this budget, if you're looking at £100, you might run out of the leagues you want to play. Then I think you can start looking at trading. And, you know, you can trade on any budget. I'm just saying this is a good example budget. So I'm looking at a player now, for example, that I have in my gallery, and I only use him because I know the most about him. I'm not saying he's a great pickup now or you should try this. But, you know, for me, he's dropping in price a little bit because of these last couple of awful scores, because he started on the bench last game. But the more you know about football, the more you know about a player, the better opportunity in the market you're going to have. So for me, my opinion of Sorare is that he's a great player. He was just benched on the weekend because he had a midweek fixture and they wanted full fitness. So a lot of people won't know that and they're panic selling him for £2.78. By the time the weekend comes around, it could be very likely that he's back up to £4 or £5. So yes, it's not a big profit, but if you buy a couple of them, flip them over, have a couple of other players like him, I think there is good opportunities in the market. It's slept on by a lot of managers, including myself. I don't really trade, but a good way to start playing on Sorare. You know, treat it like FIFA Ultimate Team, just buying in and out of players. The more you do it, the more you're going to learn about cycles, the more you're going to learn about players that are good. And I think it's a really fun strategy to play the game, which people don't do. People don't do enough. Moving on then, looking at the region of £100 to a £500 budget, what I'd be looking at here, or what most YouTubers, or probably every single one would tell you to do, is play the Cap 240 Limited League. The reason for that is that you can afford a whole team, and you got the chance of winning rare cards, so you're going up scarcities, you know, really high upside. But the key one is that you just have to hit a score of 250 points to get ETH rewards, to get essentially cash, right, just paid in Ethereum. For hitting over 250 points, which is a really, really achievable score, you can get $5. You can do that twice a week if you have European fixtures or maybe the Championship where they play, you know, quite a lot of fixtures in a season. But yeah, all you have to do is use a cap of 240. So your players' last 15 averages have to add up to 240, and they need to outperform that by 10 points and score 250. It's really achievable. A lot of people are really successful with it, and I definitely agree you should do it. But where I want to say, especially on the higher end of this budget, what I want to improve this by is by also playing the competitions. What I mean by the competitions is any of these leagues. So you got Challenger Europe, Champion America, Champion Asia, Champion Europe, Under 23s, all of these different leagues. You can pretty much specialize whichever kind of region you prefer. But why I would drill down into one of these, like a Challenger Europe could be perfect, for example. If you drill down into Challenger Europe, you get the upside of being able to win divisions and learning about the divisions whilst also playing the Cap 240. So what a lot of people would do would have a Cap 240 team in, say, Challenger Europe, and then maybe have an Asia team as well, because, you know, it's the cheapest available one. Whereas if you merge them and compete solely in Asia, but you've got enough players where you can pick different depths, right? So you have different fixture selections, what I mean here. By having more than, say, 10 cards, you go to 20 cards, but all in the same region, then you can bring whichever competition you want to specialize in for that week. So you might think you've got a really good Asia team, so you're going to put it in, you know, the best team. Or your Asia team could be underperforming, so you can put it in the Cap 240 because all their averages are pretty low. To summarize then, because I'm not sure that's completely clear, the Cap 240 leagues is exactly where you want to be playing. The reason for that is it's got really massive upsides if you put up high scores, and you can win $5 every single week of Ethereum. You can even do it twice a week if you've got the depth of selections to pick from. But rather than just doing Cap 240, I want all your players to be based in one region. So for example, Asia. If all of your players are based in Asia, then you can make fixture selections and then pick which league you're gonna, you know, essentially try and win the most in. You know, which is your best team and which is your second best team. Once you do that, then you have the upsides of both leagues. Then you're going to have much more knowledge of one specific league and, yeah, gain an edge over your competition. When you're on a £500 to £1,000 budget on Sorare, it's not so streamlined on where you should be playing because there's loads of different options. You know, one option that I would think would be really good is adding all of my strategies from the earlier budgets up and just do all of them. The issue is you can end up with like 10 teams and you need to have knowledge of, you know, 4 different leagues and 50 different fixtures and all of these different injury news, and a lot of people can't keep up with that, and I completely understand that. I've had that problem myself where, you know, I found myself missing key injury news and didn't know who was suspended and things like that. So instead, what I think you can do is start to look up the scarcities. So there is essentially like an entry level division in trying to enter into what's called the Cap 220. So the Cap 220 rare, for example, will let you play one limited card, and you probably use a goalkeeper, as I said, they're most expensive before, and 4 different rare cards. So as you build up the divisions, it might be a good start to try and, you're doing really well in limited. Maybe you've won a rare reward. If you can start buying some cheap rare players to get you set for this division, because Cap 220, they need an average of under 220 across 5 players. That's a really low average. You don't need high performing cards. And, there is really cheap teams in here that have put up really big scores. And then they're getting, rare rewards, which are going to be most likely 10 times better, or 10 times more expensive at least, sorry. So that's what I would start doing. And the key to that is that it's so hard to progress on Sorare without putting a lot more money in. So if you can start your progress early, very, very slowly, I think that's a good way to do it. And that leads us on to the next strategy. So the next strategy is £1,000 to £2,000, and you could probably even increase that further, to be honest. But what you're going to be looking for to do is essentially what we're doing in the £100 to £500 range. Now you've essentially 10x'd how much money you want to put into the game. I think the same strategy, but in the scarcity above, is a great option. So we discussed the Cap 240 before. We said how it is $5 a day, but in rare, a week. In rare, it's going to be $50 a week. And it's this exact same rule. So you would have that experience from using it before, but on top of that, less people are going to play. So you get more chance of winning right at the top of the pool, where you can get a super rare tier 3 and a rare star. If you don't know what a rare star is, you're looking at people like Kylian Mbappe, who sell for, that's his limited price, so who sells for last sale of £3,600, £4,500 before that. If you hit that, you've had an absolute jackpot, of course. So that's the type of things you start opening yourself up for. And that's why in the scarcity before, when I was talking about the £500 to £1,000 range, I wanted to start introducing rare cards a little bit earlier, because a lot of people will be like a limited whale, like I was at one point, and just keep buying the best limited cards, and they'll stay in that division, they'll do really well, but they can't progress up the game. What I found recently is Sorare is not forcing people up the game, but the incentives are there where if you do progress, it's going to be more beneficial for you. So that's why I think in this new updated 2023 version of this video, I think it is better to move up the scarcities. Last year I was not afraid to stay. I thought the best optimal strategy last time out was to stay in the limited division and have the biggest, best gallery you can. But they're changing that, and now I think it's better to move up the scarcities where possible. But the problem is, because most leagues are 10 times more expensive, not a lot of people are ready to just make that jump and just go 10x, here you go, have all of this more money. It's not really how it works. If you can make small steps towards it, but like I said, you should be playing the Cap 240, but specific in one region. So rather than Asia this time, let's say MLS, let's say America, all of the different American leagues, you can play that American league every week, and then you can specialize between Cap 240 or the American league, whichever one you think you've got the best opportunity in. Each will have their different upsides, right? So Cap 240 will have the higher upside because you can get a super rare from a different scarcity. But the problem is you also run the risk of playing against much more people, because more people play this because of the cash rewards, for example. So that's kind of where I lie on my thoughts. It is the best strategy on the higher end is to try and specialize in a division, in a region, in Asia or in America, or maybe Champion Europe. That's what I like to specialize in, because that has the best leagues in the world. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, please drop me a like and a comment on what you think's best. These are just my thoughts at the end of the day. Play it in the most fun way that you want to. Subscribe as well. All the best to you. Cheers.